South Africans get access to important information held by the state and possibly other persons or businesses. Well, that will be the basis of the Information Regulator's visit to Soweto tomorrow. The office will be commemorating the International Day for Universal Access to Information. The aim here is the promotion of the Access to Information Act, known as Paya. Let's discuss this important initiative now with the Information Regulator herself, Advocate Pansy Tlakula. Advocate Tlakula, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. What has led you, or maybe why have you felt it necessary to do this intervention in Soweto tomorrow around Paya, the Promotion of Access to Information Act?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. I think historically, the right of access to information has been perceived as a right that can be exercised by the media or by non-governmental organizations requesting information from government on behalf of the people. But we think that the right of access to information is an enabling right that enables everyone, citizens, and in some respects, even non-citizens, to exercise other rights. Because without access to information, it becomes very difficult for one to exercise their rights. I can give an example, the right to vote, which I'm familiar with. Without information, it will be very difficult for citizens to exercise their right if they don't know the location of the voting stations, the opening hours, and so on. So we felt that it was important for us to go and have a conversation with the people about this right. And what informed our decision really is what has been happening, particularly at local government level. You see that there are lots of protests for service delivery. I'm not sure whether people even know where to get those services, who to speak to. So we want to empower the people out there to say they can use their right of access to information to demand information regarding the services that are being delivered or the reasons for those services not being delivered. So that's the reason we're going to Soweto.
So there's a link with good governance at the local level.
Good governance and transparency as well. I think that's what the right of access to information seeks to achieve, and also accountability. That is why we are saying that it's one of the most important rights in the Constitution, because it enables the exercise of other rights.
Does your initiative therefore involve, you've explained the what, or the how to exercise that right? Are you empowering the people of Soweto, for example, tomorrow, and I'm sure elsewhere in the country, as you carry out your intervention on the how part of it?
Exactly. On the how part, it's important. For instance, each private body and each public body must have what we call a Paya manual, which describes the type of information that a body holds and so on. And it also says how can you access information. For instance, people do not know that if they want right of access, if they want to access any information, they have to go to the body where they want information from. There are procedures in there. They must put in a request for accessing that information. If the information is not being given to them, then internally they have to appeal to the body that is entrusted with that appellate responsibility. Once they have exhausted the internal remedies, it's then they can come to the Information Regulator, and we can then investigate the complaint that they lodge with us for information not being made available to them. And there are consequences once we find that, in fact, the body had to make the information available. Then through what we call the Enforcement Committee, we can force that body to make information available to the requester, and non-compliance with that has consequences. It's a criminal offense. So people have to know that, unlike in the past when the Paya was with the South African Human Rights Commission, there were no consequences for non-compliance at that time. But now, since Paya is with the Information Regulator, there are consequences for not responding positively to information that a person requests, if at all, in fact, if the information is available and if all the processes have been complied with.
What are the consequences? What are the consequences?
Assuming, in fact, before I even come to the consequences, let me make an example of eNCA, which is a private body. eNCA must have a manual, a Paya manual compiled in terms of Section 51 of Paya, which talks about the information, the structure of the company, the information that it holds, and so on and so forth, and whether the company has registered the information officer and deputy information officer with the regulator. But coming to your question, the consequences are as follows. If a person has exhausted internal remedies in the body in which she is requesting information, then he can lodge a complaint with the regulator. The regulator will investigate the complaint and take the investigative report to the enforcement committee. The enforcement committee will then make a finding whether the information should be released or not, and also a recommendation. If the finding is that the information has to be released by that body, that the enforcement committee will also make a recommendation on which information has to be released within which period. And the decision, the recommendation of the enforcement committee comes to the information regulator, which the information regulator will then issue what we call an enforcement notice, which will be a notice instructing the body to release the information within a particular period. If a body fails to comply with the enforcement committee, then that constitutes a criminal offense for the information officer. So it's important for people to know that if you are an information officer and the regulator finds against you that you failed to release information that was requested when you were supposed to do so, then that you are then, as the information officer, the person that will institute criminal proceedings against, and there will have to be investigations, and there will also have to be prosecution, and the sentence is 3 years imprisonment maximum.
Thank you very much for your time, Advocate Pansy Tlakula, this afternoon on Today. She's, of course, the Information Regulator, just talking to us ahead of tomorrow's public engagement session in Soweto at the Orlando East Communal Hall, round about the Promotion of Access to Information Act, just to try and educate the public about how they can access and enable them to access information held both by the public and private entities.